Hello and welcome to Insight, a public affairs presentation of Mega Rock, WMKX Brookville, and WJNG Johnsonburg. I'm Sharon Stewart. Joining us on the telephone today is Dr. Laura Erickson-Schroth, Chief Medical Officer of the JED Foundation and also a practicing psychiatrist. Thanks for talking to us today on Insight.
Thank you so much for having me.
There's a new report that warns of worsening mental health for teens in the United States.
Yeah, so, I think young people are really struggling right now, and the reports that are coming out are showing that. So we have a couple of CDC reports. One is the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which looks at teens in high schools across the U.S., and the percentage of high school students that are reporting feeling sad or hopeless at some point during the last year has increased about 14 percentage points in the last decade, from about 28 to 42%. And another CDC report shows us that suicide is the second leading cause of death for young people ages 10 to 34 in this country.
That's shocking because you would assume that would be the best time of their life.
Yeah, it's a different world that young people are living in these days. I think that there's a kind of information overload that we didn't experience when we were younger, and they're being exposed to really difficult topics in their news feeds kind of constantly. They're also living in online worlds. And social media can have really positive effects. It can help connect them with others, especially if they're in an area where they may not have as many people like them around them. But it also leads to comparisons and a kind of hijacking of reward systems. I think the most important thing to talk about and why we're seeing these trends is that young people are missing out on community and social interaction.
Yeah.
And actually the Surgeon General released a report this past month where he talked about the epidemic of loneliness in this country. And he talked about the health impact of that, that social disconnection is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So for young people especially, they're really missing out on community and connection. If you look at research over the last 20 years, there's been a drop of about 70% in the amount of in-person time spent with friends, from about 2.5 hours to about 40 minutes per day. And humans are social animals, and young people are really needing social connection at that age. We know through research that isolation leads to anxiety, depression, suicidality, substance abuse, and that the opposite's true. If we can connect people to community, we can decrease levels of depression and suicidality.
We're connected, yet we're disconnected nowadays.
Exactly. It's a hard world to live in right now.
So as parents, what signs should we look for to recognize that our children are struggling?
Yeah, that's something that JED focuses quite a bit on. We want to make sure that adults and also teens know how to recognize signs of distress in their children and in their friends, and especially teens, because about 3/4 of young people will go to a peer before they'll go to an adult. And the people in your life are the people who are most likely to recognize that something's going on with you. And that's because they notice changes in your mood and your behavior that someone who doesn't know you might not necessarily recognize. So they might notice things like you're isolating, you're not spending as much time with friends and family, you're not doing things that you enjoy doing as much, your mood is low, you're more irritable, not eating or sleeping the same that you used to, or your hygiene is poor. Some young people might be having increasing use of drugs and alcohol. And so if you notice any of those things, that's the time to start having conversations and reach out to someone.
You mentioned the JED Foundation. Can you fill our listeners in briefly about the organization and how it came to be?
So the JED Foundation is the national nonprofit that protects emotional health and prevents suicide for teens and young adults. And it was founded by a couple who lost their son to suicide. His name was Jed. And our signature programs actually are working with high schools and colleges to help them to assess and strengthen their mental health and suicide prevention programs. So we've worked with over 500 high schools and colleges across the U.S., representing about 15 high school and higher ed students. And then we also have campaigns to help young people to recognize signs of distress and support support each other, and we have resources on our website to help young people, parents and guardians, teachers, coaches to learn about mental health and how to support young people.
I'm on the website now. Very cool that you can just go there and find resources as well.
Exactly. And actually for Mental Health Awareness Month this May, we have a specific part of the website that helps young people to figure out how to get connected and find community, because we think that's such an important thing right now. Mm-hmm. And that's at jedfoundation.org/MHAM for Mental Health Awareness Month.
So just by sharing the website, we may be able to strike a conversation on the subject of mental health in our youth.
Exactly. That's the most important thing, is to open these conversations.
And I also like how it's geared towards youth and adults as well.
Yeah, we have information exactly for young people themselves, and then also for what we call caring adults. So that's their parents and guardians. That's teachers, coaches. We actually have specific guides, for example, for high school teachers and high school coaches on the ways that they can build in mental health resources and support in the work that they do.
Well, thank you so much for this useful information, and I encourage everyone to go to the JED Foundation website. It's jedfoundation.org if you need help or if you want to help, or if you'd like to find resources too, or even donate. Thank you so much for all this important and useful information, Dr. Laura, and it'd be great if you could come back and talk with us again.
That sounds great.
That's Dr. Laura Erickson-Schroth, practicing psychiatrist and chief medical officer at the JED Foundation. And that's Insight for this week. If you'd like to be a guest on Insight, please call me at Mega Rock at 849-8100, extension 22. The opinions expressed on Insight are not necessarily those of Stratton Broadcasting Incorporated. I'm Sharon Stewart. Thanks for tuning into Insight.